Sometimes you meet someone and you just know. There's no analysis, no weighing of pros and cons, just that quiet certainty in your body. This person matters. And while that kind of connection is often described in the language of romance, it doesn't have to be. It can happen in friendship, in business, even in a brief encounter that somehow stays with you for years. I was 19 when it happened to me. On holiday in Hungary, driving through the early morning fog as it began to lift from the small village we had finally reached after a long and restless journey. Our eyes were heavy, our legs stiff from the drive, but our mood was light. We were here. We'd made it. As we slowed through the narrow street, I remember the houses, each one different, each with its own story carved into its wood and stone. And then, not far ahead, we saw it, the guest house we had booked. The door was still closed, so we stood with our bags in hand and rang the bell. And that's when I saw her, Christina. She opened the door slowly, and for a moment, everything stopped. It's hard to describe that kind of moment without sounding dramatic, but something happened in the silence. A kind of music played, one only we could hear. There was no lightning bolt, no cheesy violins, just something unmistakable, something clear. 5 years later, we were married, just a few hundred meters away, in a small castle surrounded by friends and family. We were young, playful, innocent even. She opened a beauty salon. I was well on my way to becoming the entrepreneur I dreamed of being. We didn't have much, but we had energy, belief, and that beautiful naivety that makes the future feel limitless. But years have a way of shaping you. They stretch you, soften you, sometimes harden you. They give you experiences, insights, shifts you never asked for. And slowly, so slowly, you don't even notice at first. You change. Not in an explosive, dramatic way, but in those small daily recalibrations that slowly pull you away from the person you once were. That's what happened to us. Not a loss of love, not anger or betrayal, just distance. Not across the room, but inside ourselves. The dreams we once built together began to drift in different directions. And then, one day, I caught myself wondering, why are we still together? Was it the promise we made in that beautiful castle? Was it the familiarity? The shared memories? Or had we simply outgrown each other and didn't yet know what to call it? We still laughed. We still had long conversations. We enjoyed time together. But a question started pressing at the edges of my thoughts. Is this love? Or have we become two good friends living in the same house? And once that question shows up, it rarely leaves quietly. After 16 years together, our story came to an end. Quietly, gently, without drama, without betrayal. No one else entered the picture. There was no explosive moment that tore us apart. Just a growing sense of truth that we could no longer ignore. And yet, it's never an easy decision. How do you know when it's time to let go? How do you know whether to stay, or whether your time together has simply reached its natural conclusion? How do you find the clarity to break a vow you once made with your whole heart? For me, the answer came through a small but powerful exercise. Something I'd learned, something I now teach others. And if you're in that same uncertain space, not knowing whether to hold on or to release, this may be something worth trying. The exercise is simple, but it asks for honesty. Start by writing down what you truly expect in a relationship, not the surface level wishes, like I want someone who brings me coffee in bed, or someone who tells good jokes. Those are details. What you're looking for is the deeper theme behind those details. In the case of coffee, maybe it's about tenderness, care, a sense of being looked after. In the case of humor, maybe it's joy, lightness, shared laughter. Go beyond the behaviors. Find the values underneath them. And when you write, don't write what's polite. Don't write what others would expect of you. Don't write what you've convinced yourself is reasonable. Instead, ask yourself what you really want, what you need to feel connected, alive, safe, and met in a relationship. That's what I did. I didn't judge what I wrote. I didn't edit myself. I simply asked, what makes a partnership feel like home to me? And what came out surprised me. I wrote about wanting shared interests in politics, in travel, in personal growth. I wrote about wanting physical intimacy, not just as affection, but as expression. I wrote about movement, shared activities, shared sports, things done side by side. I wrote about curiosity, the kind that goes beyond small talk. I wrote about play, and I wrote about silence, but the kind that feels warm, not cold. And when I looked at that list, not with guilt, not with hope, but with honesty, I saw what had been quietly missing for years. Not because the other person failed, not because I failed, but because our paths had drifted. Our desires had changed, and the overlap had grown thin. It didn't make the love less real, but it did make the next step clear. The reason I was able to see things so clearly, not with blame, not with regret, but with honesty, was because after finishing my list, I did something simple but essential. I ranked it. I created a top 10. And from that 10, I chose a top 3. That top 3 represented my non-negotiables, the things I wasn't willing to compromise on anymore. Not because I was being rigid, but because I had finally understood what truly mattered to me, what I needed to feel alive in a relationship, what I needed to show up fully. The rest of the list, I still cared about those things deeply. They would make a relationship rich, vibrant, deeply fulfilling. But I also knew that perfection doesn't exist, and that no one, no relationship, can carry every ideal. So I allowed myself space, flexibility. If some of those were missing, I could live with it. I could adapt. But the top 3, those weren't preferences. They were pillars. And when I looked at my relationship through that lens, when I gently, lovingly held my reality up to that list, I saw the truth. 2 out of my 3 non-negotiables were no longer present. Not in the way I needed. Not in the way that made me feel connected, safe, and fully myself. And even more importantly, I knew those things wouldn't return. Not even with coaching. Not even with our best effort. Not because we hadn't tried, but because we had simply grown in different directions. That's when I knew. That's when I found the courage to let go. Not in anger, not in disappointment, but in love. Love for her, and love for myself. Because sometimes, the most honest thing we can do is to stop holding on to something that no longer holds us. And sometimes the most loving act is to say goodbye, not because it wasn't enough, but because you finally know what is.